Okay, we are live.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Port Royal public hearing on January 13th. We're going to go ahead and call this to order. The purpose of this public hearing is ordinance 20-20-37, an ordinance prohibiting camping in public places in the town of Port Royal. We'll open it up for public comment. Brooke, have we received any public comment prior to the start of the meeting?
We received one, sir, Miss Bernadette Clayton, and that was our one comment.
Very good. I will read that into the record. I'm reading in from Bernadette Clayton, 1108 12th Street. In regards to the question about public camping, I do agree that it should be prohibited, especially if it is inhibiting the intended use of our parks. However, on the flip side, the lack of available homeless shelter needs to be addressed by the town, the county, as a community, and help people who have fallen through hard times. Bernadette, thank you for your comments, and I agree with you on those comments as well. We'll give it another couple of seconds here and see if anything else comes in.
Evening, Kev.
Evening, Kevin.
Now, Mayor DeVito, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely, Jerry, go ahead.
Just so I know from my mind, that has nothing to do with, that will not impact the campground that came before us several months ago, correct?
That is correct. It literally is a public ground that's not designated for camping.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Right, so it's the right of ways that we own, the parks, the property that we own, the beach.
State parks.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else so far that's come in, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 20-20-37. And I am going to open the public hearing on the special needs assessment. This is going to be a presentation by Ms. Daly. I see you have joined us. I think Brooke is going to be sharing it and you're going to be narrating. Remind you, you may be on mute.
There we go. How about that?
There you go. We just start everybody on mute just so that you have to fumble around and find it.
Keeps you humble, huh? Okay. This is your annual needs assessment public hearing. This is the first step towards applying for CDBG funding. So let me tell you a little bit about what CDBG is, starting with fair housing. We all have the right to be treated fairly regardless of race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin, in the sale and rental of housing, in residential real estate transactions, and in the provision of brokerage services. Next slide. Let's move forward. There we go. If you believe you've been a victim of discriminatory housing practices, you should reach out to Low Country Council of Governments at the phone number at the bottom for an investigation. Okay, the CDBG program is designed to provide assistance to units of local government in improving economic opportunities and meeting community revitalization needs, particularly for persons of low and moderate income. And what does that mean? The next slide will show you in Beaufort County. Click it one more time, Brooke. Advance one more and it'll show you the rest of it. There you go. So in Beaufort County, low to moderate income, we're looking at that bottom line there. So a household of 4 people would have to make less than $65,200 a year. 2 people would have to make less than $52,200 a year. And the next slide is Jasper County's LMI numbers, which are considerably lower, just for your reference. Okay, the next slide. There we go. Okay, CDBG has been funded through the state since 1982 by the Department of Housing and Urban Development under Title I of the Housing Community Development Act of 1974. Okay. And of course, we're doing this public hearing as the budget numbers are being finalized. So as far as we know, that the allocation is going to be roughly $20,214,575 for the 2021 year. That's starting in April and ending the next March. Because the numbers are not finalized yet, the draft action plan is up on CDBG's South Carolina website, and written comments are being taken until February 4th. So if you're interested in that, cdbgsc.com. So what CDBG funding can do, there are 3 broad categories: community development, business development, and regional planning. Community development is about 12 million of those $20 million. So it's the majority of the program. And because of that, it's going to be broke down into several subcategories, which is the next 2 slides. So we start with the top left, our spring round, and that's 12.3 million of that community development funding. Applications in March, application requests in March, applications in April. Projects ranging from 50,000 to 750,000, although you can ask for a waiver to apply for up to $1 million. And these are water, sewer, drainage roads. So that's the spring round. Then we look at fall round, starting on the right side here with community enrichment, $3 million statewide, application requests in August, applications in September. And there's a lot more variety in what fall round projects can be, starting with streetscapes, libraries, public facilities, fire stations, fire trucks, health clinics, a lot of different things that you can do in the fall round. Projects ranging from 50,000 to 500,000 or 750,000 for streetscape. You guys have an open streetscape grant, so you wouldn't be able to apply for another one of those yet. And then the bottom here, we have special projects, $1 million statewide. It's again a fall round. Thanks. And economic development, public health and safety, energy conservation, historic preservation, parks, trails, and greenways. This one is a smaller grant, so 50,000 to 200,000, and that 200,000 cap is solid. There's no request of a waiver on that one. Okay, now I'm ready for the next one, Brooke. Okay, and I'm going to go to this right-hand neighborhood revitalization. This is again a fall round option, and this is several different activities in a concentrated neighborhood. So you can do the infrastructure activities. You can also do sidewalks, cameras, signage, that sort of thing, but all in one neighborhood. The catch is you have to have a neighborhood plan, and that has to be done in advance. So that probably means hiring a consultant to come up with a plan, and that's an out-of-pocket expense before we even submit the application. So 50,000 to 500,000, 750,000 if it includes infrastructure. And then on the left here, we have the ready to go. That is a project that is shovel ready. You've done the environmental, you've done the engineering. You can do any of the activities listed in the other community infrastructure and community enrichment. 50,000 to 500,000, and you can ask for a waiver of the max. They're going to want you to have an urgent and compelling need not to compete in spring or fall. And it needs to be truly shovel ready. All of the upfront, including the environmental, is done in advance. And this bottom corner is important. So all of these projects need to meet a national objective, and HUD's national objectives are benefiting low to moderate income persons, aid in the prevention of slum and blight, and urgent community needs posing a serious threat to health and welfare. And all of these projects also need to have 10% match contribution from the locality. It doesn't have to come from town funding. It can come from another grant or another source. Next slide. So all of that was community development. Now we get into the remainder of the funding, which is business development, $2 million statewide. You're looking at new and expanding businesses tied to job creation, area economic development activities not associated with job creation, new or expanding local businesses that provide essential goods and services in predominantly LMI communities. And then regional planning and state technical assistance round out the funding. Next slide. Okay, opportunity zones. You guys are not in an opportunity zone, so you give up those 10 bonus points, which a fundable project has to have something like 200 bonus points, so it's not going to hurt you terribly. Okay, performance threshold. This is the first year that I've been doing this that you guys have had a threshold issue. You can have up to 3 open grants at any one time. So you have 2 open grants right now. You could apply for a third one if you wanted to. as long as none of them is over the 30-month grant period and yours are brand new. So next slide. The other thresholds to consider are neighborhood revitalization or streetscapes. You can only have one of those. So you couldn't start a new streetscape application, no more than one ready to go, no more than one project for the same general area at the same time. Next slide. Okay, now I'm going to transition from projects where the town would be the applicant and the grantee to the home consortium, which is where individuals living in owner-occupied homes that are in need of rehab can apply to the COG for assistance in getting that rehabilitation done. So the home consortium is the 4 counties, Beaufort, Colleton, Hampton, and Jasper, and all 21 municipalities. Next slide. Okay, and what the consortium does is we do rehabilitation of substandard housing, increasing accessibility to adequate and affordable housing, and supporting the development and availability of safe, decent, and affordable housing. So if people are interested in the home consortium funding, they can contact the COG directly. Next slide. Okay, as the housing stock ages, there becomes a greater need for rehabilitation of substandard houses. And there's that. Okay, and if you have a list of priority housing needs, you're welcome to contact the COG before April 30th and submit those to the COG. Okay, next slide. Okay, new this year, we have CARES Act funding passing through the CDBG program. As you know, the CARES Act was passed in March. And so what's different from other CARES Act funding is that these two have to also follow all the CDBG rules, benefit low to moderate income persons, slum and blight, and urgent need. Environmental reviews still have to be done on CARES Act CDBG projects. So that's going to take you some time on the front end. On the plus side, it doesn't count against your CDBG threshold. So if you have 3 open grants, you could still apply for CARES Act funding, and no local match is required. So this is still sort of evolving. So there will be more information as it comes out on cdbgsc.com. Next slide. Okay. This CARES Act funding is divided into 2 programs, starting with community and public services, to provide new or quantifiably increased public services that will benefit LMI individuals to prepare, respond to, and prevent coronavirus. And they've done this one a little bit differently. So they've divided it into regions. And in this case, the regions are the COG regions. So Low Country COG serves Beaufort, Jasper, Hampton, Colleton, and that is your region. And this region is allocated $858,483. So now they're looking for you to submit applications for projects to allocate that money. Funding priorities due March 1st. So I believe that's before your retreat. So you want to think about anything that you have in mind for that sooner. And what they'll fund is PPE, equipment or property needed for a public service, ventilators, medical equipment, mobile health care, testing and tracking, food pantries and distribution, after school education and senior services. So that was the community and public services. Now the other piece is public facilities. This is not divided regionally at all. This is $3 million statewide to adapt, retrofit, or rehabilitate schools or other public facilities. And some ideas they had: HVAC and air filtration, expansion and remodeling of classrooms, equipment or public improvements needed to expand or improve internet access. Letter of intent on this one is due July 1st. I believe that's the last slide. And so if anybody has any questions about CDBG, I'm happy to answer.
I don't have any questions. I know we've got the streetscape, we've got the sewer project.
So you have one open slot if you want.
How
Okay.
common is it for a municipality or entity to have 3 at one time?
I mean, it happens. I believe Estill has 3 right now. There are several that have 3 right now.
Okay.
And I was gonna ask a
Van,
question.
any thoughts on the Van and Chief, both chiefs, any thoughts on the CARES Act one?
I'd like to ask a question, Mayor. Is the Love House Ministries after school program plugged into the LOCOG for the CDBG CARES Act money? Those are the ones that are working in the town of Port Royal and the city of Beaufort right now.
I've not heard from them.
It's okay, said not heard from them.
Thank
Good
you.
point, Reese. Let's see what we can do to help that along.
Mhm.
Well, regarding the CARES Act, certainly we have some expenses associated with COVID. But the reality is for us, it's going to be a revenue issue.
Right,
And that's something that is really going to come to light, I think, here shortly,
Mhm.
having to do with collections on A-tax and H-tax, as well as to see how property tax revenues come in.
Mhm.
That's where we may have issues.
yeah.
We never closed.
Right.
So we stayed operational, be it behind closed doors. But for us, it's, there's some PPE that we, purchase, things like that.
Right.
And maybe some additional, time accrued and some leave issues. But the reality, it's a revenue question. It's not so much for us an expense one, to be honest with you.
The one that was kind of I was thinking about that jumped out at me a little bit, and Jessica, please tell me if I'm off base here, is could we do something with the CARES Act money to open up some public access to Wi-Fi, say at certain locations, that we enhance and boost the Wi-Fi around City Hall, that anybody can come to City Hall, sit, use the public benches out front, access Wi-Fi. Do that at 1 or 2 locations, separate from our Wi-Fi. I'm not saying the city, just a public Wi-Fi. Is that the type of thing, Jessica, that you think that they're thinking about here?
That's exactly the type of thing they're thinking about. The problem qualifying, though, is to get to the low and moderate income individual. So if you're in a low to moderate income area, I know a lot of counties have community centers that are maybe out there in the country where there isn't good Wi-Fi.
So, again, if we think about some of the areas that we have to deal with where we have parks or open space, that we do something at that park, where we
Right.
put a public Wi-Fi hub up at the park, and
Absolutely.
offer it in that way, in those areas. That's what was coming to mind for me in how we might do something with that. Obviously, we can have a further discussion at next month's workshop to
Right.
really toss that around and think if it works in any way.
Mhm.
And our LMI areas better than all of us do. I know some of them. I don't know that I know all of them.
Mhm.
So that might be something we can go forward with.
You're going to be knocking on that March 1st deadline, though, I believe, right?
Yep.
So if we can submit that as a priority prior to March 1st,
Okay.
then that gives you a little time to flesh it out.
We can flush it out. Yeah.
And Jessica, I had a question.
Mhm.
Just how the funding process goes. So is it when you submit a grant application, is it just they look at that and if you meet the requirements, you're approved? Or is it they have a certain pot of money and it's first in gets it, or is it they take them all and then they do their own assessment of who has the most need? Or
They do a very complicated assessment. The grading criteria, if you will, are online. But all of the spring round applications are judged against one another.
okay,
And so it's very competitive.
okay.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Any
Okay.
comment from the public that has come in?
No, sir.
Well, then, Jessica, thank you once again for, updating us. And, it's always great to hear from you and just remind us of what these programs are and allow us to keep moving forward. We got 2 in the hopper. Let's see if we can be one of those people that have 3, and we'll see where we go from there. Harold, do you have something?
No, I don't.
Okay. In hearing nothing else, I will go ahead and close the public hearing.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
And
night.
at this time, I will go ahead and open the Town of Port Royal January council meeting. I will call this meeting to order. This is going to be a virtual meeting. If you're watching it, you know that already, but I have to announce that. And the first item of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Kevin, if you're willing to lead us in the pledge, make sure you come off a mute before you start leading us. And do we have a flag that we can put up, please?
The one right behind Kevin.
I
We can
moved
use
it there
that
for
one.
that reason.
Let's do it. We'll use Kevin's.
Oh, good. I have an emergency, Joe. I'm gonna have to step out for a second.
Very good. Understand, sir.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
of the
States,
United States of America,
to the republic
For which it
which
stands,
stands
one nation.
nation,
under God,
indivisible.
justice for all.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. And Jerry, could you lead us in the prayer? Daryl had to step away, please.
Sure, yeah. Would you bow your heads with me, please? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the wonderful things that you've given us in this life, Lord. We thank you for this wonderful opportunity that you've given us tonight to get together and discuss the business of our town. Lord, I ask that you give us the courage, the wisdom, the words, and the discernment to make the decisions that are pleasing in your sight. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
We'll go ahead and move along. I'm sure Daryl will jump back in as quick as he can once he deals with his emergency. Next item of business is we have 3 sets of minutes that were in our packet that we need to get approved tonight. We have our special meeting minutes from December 1st, 2020. We have our special meeting minutes from December 9th, 2020. And we have our regular council meeting minutes from December 9th, 2020. What is the pleasure of council?
I make a motion, we accept the minutes.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any deletions, additions, or corrections?
No, so none for me.
Hearing
Not for me.
none, we'll go ahead and call the vote. Again, we have to do it as a roll call vote because we're virtual. Jerry, you're on top.
Jerry Ashmore, aye.
Mr. Phillips, Kevin. Mary Beth?
Aye.
Daryl stepped away. The mayor's also aye. Our next item of business is we have our annual audit. Do we have two Brooks? No. Do we have Lisa online? Do we have our auditor online?
I don't see her on Zoom. Linda, do you have her over teleconference?
I see a Linda in the attendees, or sorry, a Lisa in the attendees. set.
Yes.
Then I will promote them to panelists.
Thank you. Good evening, Lisa. We come in muted.
Okay.
There you are. We can hear
Can you
you
hear me?
now. We can
Okay.
hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Video. There we are. Okay.
Good
Now-
evening.
Good evening, everyone. Lisa Wexler here and Mark Smolinski, who worked on the audit for the town of Port Royal. Am I going to be able to use the screen, Brooke?
I'm not going to be able to share it. I thought you said you were going to be able to share on yours.
Right here, share.
Yep.
Hang on.
There we go.
There we go.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay, yes, okay. We've never been promoted before, so that was a little new for us. Yeah.
Well, we're glad Port Royal was the first to promote you then.
Thank you. Okay, so Crowley Wexler and Associates, we conducted the audit of the financial statements for the town of Port Royal, and this is as of your fiscal year in June 30th, 2020. We have it online now. This letter here, this 2-page letter here, basically says that we have taken the information that was supplied to us by management, applied our audit procedures to that information, and found that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. And that's a lot of words, I know, but basically that's what it boils down to. So here you have a condensed version of your statement of net position. Let me make it a little bit bigger so we can see it. At the end of June 30th, your net position is $5,728,000. Of that amount, you have $6,259,000 here that represents your net investment in capital assets, and $1,090,000 of that $5,728,000 is restricted by donors. And then that leaves you a deficit of $1,622,000 as unrestricted. During the year ended June 30th, 2020, that balance went down from the previous year, right here, $539,000. This statement is on the full accrual basis, so it reflects all of your long-term assets and long-term liabilities are recorded here. So you have $8,086,000 in total expenses during the year, $1,372,000 of program revenues. That amounts down because there was some grant funding in the previous year, you can see. And down here you have general revenues of approximately, if you added all that through this number here, it would be $6,417,000. And you have a special item of $243,000, which is a reduction of your net position, and that nets to the decrease of $539,000. In terms of capital asset activity during the year, at the end of this year, capital assets net of depreciation was $6,600,000. That's a decrease of about $107,000. During the year, you had capital additions of $402,000, which represented like a Freightliner. You had some roads and sidewalks, renovations and improvements to the port and Marina Village. You had HVACs and a stage for events. And then your depreciation offset that of $504,000 during the year. In terms of long-term obligations, at the end of the year, you have $4,831,000 compared to $4,007,000 over here. That represents bonds payable of $154,000. And that is a revenue bond that was paid off subsequent to the year end for the shed. So that loan is already paid off. Leases payable, last year, you only had 269. That's because you added a new lease this year of about $148,000 for some vehicles. You made your other payments on time. Net pension liability, okay, that will never be paid off. That will just always be there until GASB decides what else they want to do with it. This is the third different presentation in my career that I've seen for this net pension liability. So at the end of June, it was your share of it was $4,148,000, and then you have compensated absences of $186,000. You know, that's represents in vacation that was accrued but not taken by the employees at the end of the year. So on the next couple of pages, this is your statement of net position. So this is a little bit, this is the same thing we looked at, but this gives you a little bit more detail than the condensed version. But basically it represents the same thing, $5,728,000 total net position. And here's your restricted assets of the $1,090,000 and the deficit in the net investment capital assets. So here's your statement of activities. Same information represented here that we went over, the change in net position there of the negative 539. So then you get to the governmental fund balance sheet. Your general fund at the end of June had a balance of $2,204,000 that was unassigned. Stormwater utility fund is a major fund, so it's shown separately. It was a restricted balance of 595, and then your other governmental funds are all aggregated there together are of $495,000. So there's your $1,090,000 that was restricted, and the unassigned portion is the general fund, $2,204,000. So your total fund balances and all your funds at the end of the year is $3,295,547. On the
And
next page.
Sorry, Lisa, one second. The restricted in the stormwater is because it's restricted because of what it can be used for?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
It's
That's
not,
correct.
not saying it's restricted because we've committed it. It's not a committed.
It's
but
not a
it's
commitment.
used.
That's exactly right. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then on page 12, you have your total fund balances, the $3,295,000 we just went over, and carried over here is a reconciliation between the statement of net position and the fund statement. So here's your $3,295,000. It adds in all that capital that we talked about, some pension adjustments, and your long-term liabilities, and that gets you to the $5,728,000. So your governmental fund statement are like modified cash. And then your statement of net position is full accrual. All right, here's your P&L for your governmental funds. So this is more like you get money in, it's reported as revenue. You spend money, it's reported as an expense. So in the general fund, you had a decrease of $396,280. In your stormwater fund, I can make this a little smaller. Stormwater fund, you had an increase of 43,000, and the other governmental funds an increase of 52,000, which overall is a net decrease in your governmental funds of 300,106. And then this next statement here is your reconciliation again. So this is your net income on the governmental funds, the negative 300, and that reconciles all those differences in the long-term assets and liabilities to the 539 that was on the statement of activities. Okay. All right. So then we go into your notes. You have your summary of significant accounting policies. There's several pages on that, on how you're treating all of these assets and liabilities and revenues and expenses based on whether they're in the statement of activities or the fund statement. Then you have your cash notes, your receivable notes, your property and equipment, okay? And there's your depreciation and how it was charged and allocated. Here's your long-term obligations where it talks about your loans and your payoff schedules, which, by the way, this one's paid off, okay? So that one won't be there next year. And then you have your leases, the 2 leases. This is the new lease. This is the one that you had. Here's the payoff schedule, and here's your compensated absences. Your assessed valuation at the end of the year is $42,331,000. You had no debt applied against that debt limitation. So you have an 8% limit that you can borrow without voter approval. All right, now under long-term obligations, just talk about the pension plans, okay? So 10 pages talking about the pension plan, okay? I'm not kidding you. So it goes on, page after page. I won't go through all of that. Then you get finally here, note 7, risk management, talks about you have adequate insurance coverage, commitments and contingencies, special items, the 243 that was placed in an escrow pending the appeal of a settlement. Subsequent events, we're talking about there, the COVID and just what Van mentioned earlier about it's unknown what effect that's going to have on your financial statements. I can already see it's decreasing hospitality, accommodation taxes, business license being down, and even, believe it or not, court fines because people had to close down the court because you couldn't have the traffic in the building. So some information there. Now you get into your budget and actual comparisons here. So your revenue budget of $6,726,000 compares to your actual collections of $6,850,000. So you collected about $123,000 more than what was budgeted. In your expenses, 7,216,000, and you actually spent 7,666,000. So that's $450,000 more than what was budgeted. And then in your other financing sources, you budgeted 490,000 and spent 420,000 or received 420,000. So that's a decrease of 69,517. So that brings you down to the decrease in the general fund. And I know there's some fluctuations here in the expenses. Just briefly, I think that one related to the Porter Church renovation and construction. In the executive department, related, of course, our favorite, the shrimp docks, overages there, and some purchase of a land, a lot 4. And the 145, I think most are related to salaries and related costs. So once your salaries go up, then of course your retirement, your FICA, all of that follows it. The fire department is under budget in contracts. So that gives you kind of an idea of where those overages there came in. State pension plan. Okay, so this is going to be eventually a 10-year trend schedule, which will show you your pension liability. So you're enrolled in the SCRS, South Carolina Retirement System, and the police officers retirement system for any law enforcement officers. So this is your liability for the SCRS, and this is your liability for the PORS. Here's your contribution. So these amounts represent the actual expense the town paid in towards contributions for the employees in each one of the systems. Okay, this is your combining balance sheet for the non-major funds. So all those funds that were shown under other governmental funds are shown back here as a supplemental statement. So you have included in that 495 restricted fund balance, you have local hospitality fund of 161,000, local accommodations of 16,000, state accommodation fund of 106,000, housing rehab of 56,000, and the TIF had 154,000. Here's the P&L broken out by those non-major funds. So the local hospitality went up 32,000. The local accommodation went down $3,589. The state went down $131,000. The housing fund went up $400. The TIF went up to 154. So that nets to the 52,464 that's reported under the basic financial statements in the front. Okay, so this is a report that's required by the state to show the court fines and assessments and the surcharges, the amounts that were collected, the amounts that went towards victims, and the balance on hand for victims and what was spent for victims during the year. So this would be the end of the year balance there in victim witness assistance. And the last thing in here is the report under governmental auditing standards. We're required to report if we find any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. And I'm happy to say that we did not identify any items that we consider to be material weaknesses in the report, and have no significant deficiencies listed here either. So that's it. I know you've had the report for a while. Does anybody have any specific questions they might have about anything in the report?
Council, any questions?
Sure. I've got about 5 or 6 just points I want to ask or just make, or questions if I could.
Go Go ahead, Jerry, go for it.
Just my first point, happy to see that the shed loan was paid off. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's good. You said something about vacation accrued but not taken. Could you explain that to me one more time? I don't know if I caught it all.
Okay, so at the end of June, these were the hours that had accrued to the employees for paid time off, but they had not taken it. So the vacation time would vest with the employees. So upon termination, you would be required to pay that out to them.
And they can just continue to accrue that throughout their career. Is that right?
Yeah, they accrue it and then they take time off also that
I get-
subtract.
It's capped,
Jerry,
cap.
Van, what is the cap for Jerry?
240.
Thank you. So they can't do any more than 240.
Mm-mm.
Okay, that's fine. I just wasn't sure.
And
Lisa,
that
what's-
also includes FICA and retirement, because if you pay out salary, you'd also have to pay that as a contribution as well. So
Okay. What in your professional opinion, what were the impacts of COVID financially on the town this year? As you see it,
for 2020 or 2021?
this year that you're reporting on here, how has COVID impacted the town of Port Royal?
Well, your
Financial report.
your business license, permits, and accommodation and hospitality fees were all down during the last quarter of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yes.
What
Your,
page is that? I must have missed that.
Well, it wouldn't be reflected just in the, it's going to be reflected in the overall number. You'd have to go back and look at the last quarter monthly statements to get the
Okay.
real numbers.
I got you.
right.
Okay, but bottom line is down. Any idea of what percentage, or just it's down? Really don't know, or what do
Exactly.
you think?
Right off the top of my head, I don't, but yes, let me see, I'm trying to get back up to that section.
That was tough. That's tough, Jerry. You got to remember, this is ending in June 30th.
Right.
Yeah, this was
Right.
June 30th of last year. And that's, I've asked Van to prepare a mid-year budget update for us for next month's meeting so that we can understand what we're seeing in this current budget for that same.
Well, this would go February, March, April, May, June. So this would be half of it. I'm just wondering, curious the impact it's had percentage wise. But
Yeah.
I understand it's tough and it's something we can't do or we can't get. Then I'll that's fine. I'll go back and look at it myself.
Well, I was gonna say your business license are down approximately $233,000
Right.
this fiscal year. And then there was also court fines were down, and accommodations taxes were down too, but I don't have that specifically listed in there like I did on the court, on the business license, but.
Were we eligible for the PPP loan, and did we get it? And so how much, and how was that? How do we use that?
We did not. Van?
No, we didn't apply for a PPP loan.
No.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
I don't think we were
Were-
eligible. There
they
has
were
been
not-
virtually, just let me cover this real quick. There's been virtually nothing done for municipal governments at all, federally, period.
Gotcha.
There, yeah,
Absolutely.
there might be something coming up in this next CARES Act, but it's not gonna be a lot yet, but mostly, the governments, I think, tried to continue to pay their employees, but they, had suffered by a loss of revenues.
Okay. You mentioned there, you said fire department under budget. Can
Yeah,
you talk a little bit about that, please?
yeah, contracts were under budget.
Okay. All right.
Contract, contracts were under, it was overall under budget, 153,000, but I think it was 160 something actually in contracts that was
Okay.
under budget. No, am I right, Mark? Am I wrong? 212 in special contracts.
Okay. And then, I've got to ask a question in memory of my good friend, Mr. Bernard Loach. How are we doing? How are we doing financially? How's the town doing?
Well, I think the town is doing pretty well because honestly, When you add in that net pension liability to a lot of governmental entities, they go in the red on the net position. So even though the unrestricted portion looks like it's a deficit, like, setting off alarm bells, you guys are still in the black on the total net position, even with that 4.8 million liability.
Okay. And then my last comment would be to Van, and Van, just thank you for everything you do for the town, you and your staff, Chris Kennedy, the department heads, department chairs, and keeping us in the black and keeping us where we need to be. We much appreciate that. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to ask really quick. I know you said that you didn't see any significant deficiencies, which is good news, but just kind of asking, is there anything when you all, doing your deep dive that, I guess like storms in the future, anything that we should keep our eyes on, any issues that I said? I know we're not significant deficiencies, but just anything that we should keep on our radar?
Only thing was what we went over with Van was some of that miscellaneous income is getting pretty high and needs to start getting broken out a little bit more.
Did you hear that?
No, I did not.
Some of the miscellaneous income, we talked to, I think, Van and Chris about this at our exit meeting, was getting big enough that maybe they need to start classifying it somewhere, but not a reporting deficiency, but maybe it's getting big enough it needs its own place out of miscellaneous. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Also-
Kevin, something else?
Yeah, just one more question. And then, if we have no idea, no one has a crystal ball, but like if this year, continues and if losses in, ATAX and business license and those things continue to decrease and cut deeper, what are some things that towns do traditionally to make that up? Where do they go?
We stopped paying our council members. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
That's not going to get you much.
I know.
Yeah.
They might buy gas for a week for the police cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my first time going through an audit of a municipality, and just kind of, if we continue to see those losses and they maybe, and God forbid they increase and things accelerate, what kind of tools does a town have?
Well, in some cases, you might have to get a tax anticipation note to hold you over until your taxes come in, because this year might be that year, because I still haven't received my tax bill. It's 13th. That's, I know the county is doing a countywide tax anticipation note. So, but you don't want to use that tool if you don't think you're going to have the money coming in to replace it.
Right.
Okay. So,
And maybe I can address it a little bit.
yeah.
One of the reasons why we do build up that fund balance is in anticipation. None of us ever anticipated COVID, but obviously when we build up that fund balance, it's anticipation of revenue interruptions based upon a natural disaster like a hurricane, something like that. But beyond that, if you exhaust your fund balance, you look at things like we're contemplating tonight, a landscape contract. You may not consider a cost of living adjustment. You may realize some savings via attrition, not filling open positions. There's a lot of discretionary spending in the budget that you'd probably take a look at.
Yeah, I think Kevin, these are good conversations that we really I hope that we have next month when we get a mid-year budget update. So we know what it actually is looking like, what revenues are coming in, talk about these issues about taxes and start preparing ourselves for what we're going to do. we'll know some of that stuff, and that's, Van and Chris will be able to give us that, and that's when we need to have those conversations. And hopefully we'll get out the other side of 2021 that Lisa and her firm will be sitting here saying we did a good job then, because that's going to be the test at the end of the 2021 budget and audit.
And just to give you an idea of something that did impact us, this past year, is when SC&G was purchased by Dominion. Because of the rates and some of the other things that they did, we saw a drop in the franchise fee revenue attached to the Dominion. That was pretty significant. I think we're going to expect that for one more year. So it's kind of almost a perfect storm of things that have happened beyond just COVID that we're dealing with. And fortunately for us, with that fund balance, we were able to hold our millage steady and keep that in place. Because of some of the growth that we've had, that certainly helps. And we'll have a lot of things that come online from a tax perspective. What a lot of you probably understand is that, when you build an apartment complex, you may not see tax revenue for a year to 18 months, depending upon when the certificate of occupancy is issued. So those sort of things will start coming online, and then that growth, you'll see that growth start to impact your bottom line on the property tax side.
If we can get tax bills out.
Correct. Yeah, we can get tax
Sorry,
bills out.
had to do it.
And on the page 3, you'll see there that the fund balance, unassigned fund balance, the 2,204,000 was about 28% of your expenses. And I think that's a good place to be. I know some people hate to see this cash on hand or these big fund balances, but the reality is the majority of your revenues come in from January to June, and you've got 6 months to get through and cover all your expenses. So you want to be there, at least there, I think.
I agree.
I think that's a good number under the circumstances that we're dealing with today.
Yes,
Yep.
definitely. It's not
Yeah.
excessive at all.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Van, you and Chris and the rest of the staff have done a fabulous job. And like Lisa had said earlier, most people are in the red, we're in the black. And that's because over the years, we've learned a little bit as we've gone through. But because of the hurricanes and us being on the coast, we do learn. COVID was never thought of. And thank goodness, because of our smart way of doing it, we've been able to be able to go, because like you said, a lot of until the budget comes out, like Dominion, the franchise fees, we don't get them till the last minute. And for years before this, we always did that tax anticipation loan. We always did it, and we haven't done it. So I think that's commendable for the staff for holding the line.
Through the Great Recession and all, so.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Well, Lisa, thank you and your firm.
All right,
For all you did. I know, from our side, it's always fun to have you in here diving into all of our records, but it's a necessary, and we're glad the last page. I've read many of these in my career, and I always go to that last page first, honestly, and then I start back at the beginning, because I'm always interested in if there was anything to see. And I was looking for that number that you have on the screen now, the 28%, because that to me is very important that we keep keep that number up there. So if council has nothing else, staff has nothing else, we'll say thank you, and thanks for taking the time tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other final statements from council on the audit before we move on to our council briefing? Very good. Then Van, council briefing?
Yeah, I'm looking to see if there are any updates from last week.
Man, there was one that you didn't mention last week, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you to remind. Where are we on the Waddell Road pedestrian crossing encroachment permit?
We have it in hand, and I can send you that document. I got it from Michael Klink. Well, I can send it to you right now.
We have it
earlier in the week.
We have it
so
to
we have
submit?
it prepared, including because beyond just in submitting the encroachment permit, we had to submit detailed drawings stating exactly what we have. So it's ready. I have to sign a page of it and he sends it off.
That's fine. You don't need to send it to us as long as we know we're moving that along.
Okay.
That's something we need to do, and we need to keep that moving and see if we can't get that pedestrian crossing in there. I mean, the whole
Absolutely.
idea of the sidewalks was to connect the neighborhood with the schools, but yet they have to cross a very dangerous street without any pedestrian crossing. We need to deal with that.
And kind of related to that, we had a meeting late last week after the workshop on Friday with county staff and the engineer that's been retained to look at the crossing for the Spanish Moss Trail. And it evolved into a larger discussion of, traffic issues, basically from the bridge to the bridge, how the crossing is going to work, what the timetables are. But that then evolved into a larger discussion of really Rebo Road from Boundary Street through the town of Port Royal, and how we really need to be thinking long-term about how we incorporate the improvements that we contemplated in the tool study with the Spanish Moss Trail crossing, plus whatever could be going on in the city, focus really on from Allison Road to the town's boundary, and how Rebo Road really needs to be addressed. We've looked at the countywide, we looked at significant 278 improvements. Obviously, we've done the large Boundary Street project, 30+ million. I think it's more than that, actually. And we looked at the Ladies Island plan, which is now slated for $30+ million worth of improvements. And so the reality is we need to be looking long-term at those boundary. I mean, from Rebo Road from Boundary down through the town of Port Royal. And it's going to take a longer look. It could be as much as $60-70 million project. Could involve burying of utilities, because a major impediment to a lot of the improvements that we would like to see made in that corridor are bound or hindered by overhead utilities. And so we've got to start thinking about that and how that would be funded. And those are things that should be contemplated in any sort of impact fee program. And the window is pretty tight for this next impact fee funding cycle. But in all cases, those are typically not a single source for revenue to fund these things. So they're combined with some local dollars, potentially some federal dollars, some impact fee dollars, and then a sales tax dollars. So, thinking larger is what we need to do. And that was really the intent of the tool study, was to give us an idea of what we really needed to do in that corridor. And, thinking more short term, the mayor, we saw the list of impact fee projects. We talked about some connectivity issues, how you would potentially address Battery Creek interfacing with Rebo Road, adjacent or not adjacent to the Spanish Moss Trail. That's a little more short term, but it is part of that bigger piece that we all should be thinking about.
Yeah, I felt like when Eric presented to us last week on the impact and everything, it sounded to me like we were supposed to have a revised project list within the next couple of days. We're a week away. I haven't seen it. Has anybody else? Has it come out?
No, sir, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Me either.
Yeah. So Van, we may want to check back with Eric and see if something slowed that down to see that revised project list. I think it was 2 goals out of the list. The list was going to come out. The list was also so we could start working on prioritizing, obviously with the other agencies on those projects.
Right. And one of the other impact fees that we're thinking about and participating in is that Parks and Recreation.
Right.
And the one thing we did submit, at least initially, was the improvements to the Naval Heritage Park, which include the addressing the skateboard park, parking and pathways, and also we are even adding a potential exercise component to it that would include some equipment and some improvements. So Parks and Rec is trying to give us a better number to include that. I've given them a placeholder, and we got to see how that would be worked into the Park and Recreation impact fee.
You had mentioned that at last week's meeting that a punch list had been developed for Cypress Wetlands. Are they working on that? I know there's a few of us that have spent some time in there. Daryl, by the way, great pictures and video from the other day when the birds were there. Appreciate that. I seem
That
to
was
miss them.
good.
I must get there either a little too late to catch them in the morning. They've already gone, and I don't walk in the evenings. But I noticed that a lot of the signs, the trash receptacles, those type of posts were still kind of laying in the woods and hadn't been stood back up yet. And I
Yeah,
assume
well,
that's on the punch list.
Yeah, we'll get them back there to do that. You know, one of the things we're working on now is the planning schedule. We did ask them to go and deal with duck blinds.
Yep. update
So
on
that's
that.
something that I think they got wrapped up in the last couple of days because we coordinated getting the boards back in and getting the aerator back up and refilling it. But we'll get them back down there through those little punch list items. And I do know that we did want to coordinate the finality of that project with the Friends group so that they could start working on signs, the upgrade to the existing signs.
You know, it is a smaller area, but you know, we should always keep in mind that if one of the things is maintaining a water level in there, is contacting Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer Authority and talking with them and seeing if this meets their requirements for someplace to discharge effluent into, like they do in the Great Swamp, which has revitalized the Great Swamp in Jasper County to help us maintain a water level. Just something to keep in the back of our minds in the future. If that becomes an issue, because I know that's one of the things, we've got to keep that water level up a little bit to stop that aquatic growth. So something to keep in the back of our minds if it starts to make sense in that way.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this last week. You know, Chris Marsh has recommended a structure to help maintain water level a little bit better, and we've started the permitting for that structure, because independent of the permit we have for all of the improvements, we need to amend it to include the addition of this structure. And it still takes 4 to 6 weeks to build that structure to put it in place.
Anything more on the appraisal for the property swap?
No, nothing yet. He's been engaged. He had told me he'd have it within 15 days.
Any council have any questions on the briefing? Any updates they wanted from the briefing last week?
No, sir.
Van, anything else?
I think that's it.
Chief, Chief Beach, do you have anything you want to, good time for you?
No, sir. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Chief
sir.
Berthold?
Thank you, sir. No, we're good. The same update stands that we gave at the workshop.
Very good. Kevin, looks like you have something you're itching to say.
I was going to ask Van if he's heard anything from any update from Grey Gross as far as any master plan, how that's coming along, when we could expect to see anything like that.
I may defer to Linda a little bit on this.
Okay.
I know that we did have a meeting. We had a meeting with the planners that Grey Ghost has retained to finalize the master plan. So that is moving forward. Linda, you got anything you want to add to that?
Not really. The group that they've retained are professionals, and they were asking good questions, delving deeply into the issues around the table earlier. Well, I guess it was late last week. So I think we haven't seen a final product yet, but I am pretty confident that it's on its way. Yes.
Last time Chris stated that he had forwarded to you, Linda, I guess the designs for the boathouse, softening it. What's the status on that?
Yes, we have received that. Both the architect and I feel that the attachments that he's proposed are definitely in keeping with improving the building. I think the bottom line is, though, that it's not enough. He has put some shutters, put a number of shutters across the London Avenue facade of the building. And it does bring it to human scale. It starts to bring it down to human scale, which is that's a real job with that building. It's a good first step. We will encourage him to go ahead and do that. But we probably would also send the message that we anticipate more on more sides. You know, to their credit, he does have the eastern side is also part of this. It's anticipated that we will see something on the eastern side of that building also. And until some other issues are solved amongst you folks and Grey Ghost, we don't know where that's going. We don't know what is going to be next to that, et cetera. And I'm talking about the property swap, of course.
Thank you.
Linda, I'm sorry, while you're on, your report to us, on permits. Is the dating correct on that, or was that January's? February. Take a look at that and just check the date.
It probably, I cut and paste things, and so it could be that
Okay.
something got mixed up there. Yeah.
Okay, it shows that only 5 permits were issued in the entire, I guess was that December? Is that right?
That was correct. Yes.
Okay.
Single
All
family
right.
permits dropped down to just 5 new
Five
permits.
residential permits.
We just didn't see a lot presented to us.
Okay.
Interestingly, right now, there are 9 sitting across the table from me here. So we're going to get back on track. I think it was just the holiday slouch.
No problem. I appreciate that. It just jumped out at me as the lowest month. So I was just wanted to make sure that's all it was a cycle. It's the first time we're seeing that throughout the whole year. And maybe a good year-end report makes sense at some point as also to show what happened in 2020 completely.
And maybe it's something we probably should have talked about at the workshop, but while we're still in the briefing, there's a couple of ordinances that we're probably going to be asked to contemplate. One that I think has to do with Phil, and the other one may be some updates to stormwater regs. But Linda, are you aware of what the status is? And maybe Reese can help with this, of where the other entities are.
Right. We had the briefing, what was it, in November from Rob on the fill ordinance and the sea level rise ordinance, which was essentially a statement that's going to be put on a plat if something is anticipated to be affected at some point in the future by sea level rise. The ordinances were working their way through the county process. I'm not certain that they have gotten to first reading yet, but I will check. It has dropped off my radar. Rob and I talked about it just earlier this week, but not timing. So I don't know where we are in getting an ordinance, 2 ordinances personalized to the town of Port Royal so that we can move forward on that.
Right.
We have to do that.
That's pretty much the same for the city. The ordinances haven't come to the council yet, but staff is going to be taking a considerable approach of analysis towards the fill ordinance to make sure that it is right for municipal densities and municipal development.
Agreed. And I thought we had discussed it. The reality was that we needed those, and it's got to go to the planning commissions, obviously, to follow this. And it was going to kind of be similar to what the bag ordinance, plastic bag is county gets the first reading and the rest of us have our 2. So it kind of goes through all of our planning, and then we wait for them to do the first, and the rest of us kind of follow it along, is the way I remember it being discussed. We've got a long way to go yet. Like you said, Chief, got a long way to go.
The one thing programmatically, this is a little different because, as Chief said, it has to go to the Planning Commission. These are amendments to our zoning code, whereas some of the things that we've done most recently over the past couple of years have been to other parts of the code, like animal control and like the plastic bag, et cetera. But these are amendments to the zoning code, so they will start out at the Metropolitan Planning Commission.
Yeah. And I assume that the thing would be to align the presentations for both the city and the town at the same time, so the Planning Commission can deliberate them in one shot instead of having them come separately, if we can get to that point, because they could do both.
Staffs would appreciate that. Yes,
Yeah.
we'll
So
work on that.
we'll work with our fellow council in the city and make sure we line that up to make it easier on everybody and get it through that process. Van, and anything else? Any other briefings you want to give us about some upcoming ordinances?
I hope not. No, that's it.
Very good. Daryl, did you have something?
It's not an agenda item, so I'll ask later.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move on to item 6, which is the update to our 2 emergency ordinances. The first ordinance is ordinance 20-20-1, an emergency ordinance for the town of Port Royal, South Carolina, to reestablish requiring individuals to wear face mask coverings in circumstances in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and matters related to and its servability. What's the pleasure of council?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Is this a 30-day? Is this a till our next council meeting ordinance that we're passing?
That is correct. We are on council meeting to council meeting date scenarios for both of our emergency ordinances.
Okay, that's all I had.
Hearing nothing else, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Jerry, your upper left.
Jerry Ashmore, aye.
Mr. Phillips, Kevin,
Aye.
Mary Beth,
Aye.
Darrell,
Aye.
and the mayor's also aye. Our second emergency ordinance is ordinance 20-21-2. An emergency ordinance in reauthorizing emergency ordinance 20-20-26 related to electronic meetings and other matters related thereto. What's the pleasure of council?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-2.
Second.
Very good. Darrell, we got a second. Very good. Thank you, Jerry and Darrell. Any further discussion?
This is the same format. It carries over to our next meeting or 30 days kind of.
That's
time
correct.
frames. Yeah, no discussion.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, maybe updating our procedures, council procedures to making this may be something more permanent for emergency purposes may be applicable now that we know that this is a viable option in the future. We'll bring that up in a workshop in the next couple of months and take a look at our whole council procedures.
Sure.
If any other discussion?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote, and we'll do it backwards. Darrell,
Aye.
Mary Beth,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
and Jerry,
Jerry Ashmore, aye.
and the mayor's also aye. It's unanimous. Our next item of business, item 7, is our second reading section of our agenda. And we have one ordinance, ordinance 20-20-37, an ordinance prohibiting camping in public places in the town of Port Royal. We held our public hearing on this tonight. We received one comment in favor, yet a concern about helping them in some ways. What's the pleasure of council?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-37.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Camping defined as in any overnight stay, or what if they have, or what? How do you define camping in this situation?
All right, I can read that. The terms camp or camping shall mean the use of public parks, buildings or grounds or private property for living accommodation purposes such as sleeping activities or making preparation to sleep, including the laying down of bedding for the purpose of sleeping, or storing personal belongings, or making any fire, or using any tents or shelter or other structure or vehicle for sleeping, or doing any digging or earth breaking or undertaking cooking activities. The above listed activities constitute camping when it reasonably appears in light of all circumstances that the participants in conducting these activities are in fact using the area as a living accommodation.
And that includes staying in their car overnight.
Right. And I think Jerry may have asked a good question earlier about the, and maybe Linda can address this, maybe about the recently passed zoning change that allowed a campground, because as it does mention, camp or camping shall mean the use of public parks, buildings, or grounds or private property for living accommodation purposes.
But wouldn't the fact of that would be permitted for that, take that out of that realm? Linda, Chief, answer that.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Mayor. I think that once, well, we go through the permitting process and sanction the activity, that would take it out of the realm of this definition.
Very good.
The only concern I have about that is the exception period is except as may be permitted within municipal parks by town manager or his or her designee.
What exception would that be?
Yeah, well, that's it. Only if I were to allow it in municipal parks. Do we need another exception that basically says, or if lawful in X zoning designation on private property?
I don't know. The way I read it was that on private property, there would only be an issue if the owner of the private property had an issue.
Right.
And it's titled camping on public property prohibited.
Mhm.
So
So it doesn't, that excludes private property unless the owner, has an issue with it, and then they can charge you with trespassing.
They would call it in and we would,
Right.
yeah. I don't see it. I mean, the only other thing if you're really concerned about it is we could modify the statement private property unless permitted. I mean, if you add those two words right after private property, then once we issue a permit or a business license to do so,
Business.
it's okay. We could add those two words.
That would make it clearer.
Would
Yes.
make it clearer. Just let's add if permitted.
And Reese, I know you guys are a little ahead of us. I know you've passed this already. But I don't know if
Chief, I
there's
recognize you a
anywhere.
minute.
I don't know if there's anywhere in Beaufort where you'll allow campgrounds.
Not currently. There's no permanent campgrounds. However, an instance where this exact situation would occur is sometimes there's a reenactment encampment at the arsenal, and it's permitted prior to it occurring.
Okay, so maybe as Linda's recommended, so maybe if we have a motion to approve this ordinance with the amended language suggested by Linda.
Well, we could
If
just have
permitted.
we could just have a motion to add the language if permitted, seconded, vote on that one, then we'll go back to the original. If somebody would like to make that motion.
Well, Van, let me add one thing for you.
Sure.
If you remember a couple of years ago, Van, we almost had a group wanting to camp here. It was a group of veterans who wanted to do a camp overnight for a couple of nights to raise awareness of homeless veterans, et cetera, and to raise funds, et cetera. It didn't come to fruition here, but I know we had some discussion. So there might be an opportunity to do that on down the road. So if there's a special exception for that, then I think we need to at least consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we add the by permit language, that would give us the discretion to permit it from time to time.
That's a good idea.
And Chief Beach had his hand raised.
Chief, well, I think Kevin, you had something first.
Oh, yeah, go ahead,
One
Chief.
second, Chief. Chief, go ahead.
I was just thinking about some of the oysterers, like charities, they like to camp out overnight in their motorhomes. But I think if Mr. Willis, allows that permitted section, it would be fine.
Good.
And most of them behave, not all of them.
Not all of them.
Yep. We see the same thing with bands, brews and barbecue,
Yes,
whenever
ma'am.
they're down here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what we're looking for is a motion to add the words if permitted to add the words if permitted. Council, anybody want to make that motion?
Or
Kevin, are
Okay.
you reading it again?
Yeah, I just had a question about the recent campground that we approved. Are they gonna have people in tents and laying down bedding, or is it RVs and campers?
When I remember that plan, it could be a little bit of both, but again, if it's
Yeah.
approved,
Okay,
it's not going to be an issue because A lot of those urban style campers use small vehicles and then they set up a little tent in the camp, but it's all localized in the campsite, on their campsite, which will be an approved campsite.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-34, an ordinance prohibiting camping in public places in the town of Port Royal, with the inclusion or directing our town manager to add or include with the exception of permitting, if approved.
Yeah,
If
so
permitted.
we've got an issue, Daryl, then if you're doing a whole new motion, then we
No.
need Jerry to withdraw his motion to approve it.
Oh, I didn't know
If you want
Jerry.
to do an amendment, if you
I
want to
didn't
do
know
an
Jerry had
amendment.
entered the motion. I'm sorry, I didn't know Jerry had entered the motion. So
Yeah, you seconded. Yeah, so we got to remove that motion.
Oh, no.
completely.
Okay, yeah, I got you. Yeah, I got you, Jerry.
Just do
Jerry
a
will have-
motion to amend the
So
ordinance.
Jerry,
and add the
Jerry
word.
can amend it, yeah, and I'll second it if he does.
Okay, Jerry, you want to go ahead and do a motion to amend?
I'll make a motion to amend my previous ordinance to include as permitted.
Okay.
And I'll second that. That's, I gotta.
Very good, very good. We're back on track here. We don't want to have a misstep and get called for it later.
No.
We appreciate that. So we've had a very good discussion. Any other discussion on this?
No, sir, not for me.
Hearing then, we'll call for a vote. Jerry, can you start us off as you made this motion?
Jerry Ashmore, aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
And Mary Beth?
Mary Beth, aye.
Daryl?
Daryl always aye.
And the mayor's also aye. I appreciate all the conversation and the discussion on that one. Our next item is item number 8. We've got some council actions. We've got an appointment. We have Economic Development Board. We have 2 applicants. Are they waiting in the wings to present to us? We had said last week that they were going to address us and talk to us. Did we not organize that?
They did receive invitations. Brooke, I can't see if they're,
I don't see them in
I mean, they're not panelists. I don't know if they're listed as attendees, so I have no idea.
Tony, do you have them in your waiting room?
I'm sorry.
Do you have 2 people in your waiting room, Tony?
I don't have. I have no attendees actually. Who are we looking for?
Invitations have gone out to both Rebecca Bass and Greg Shelton.
I am going to go to the webinar on Zoom and I'm just going to verify for you all that they have gone out.
Well, either way, I think at this point, let's, is anybody willing to make a motion to postpone this till next meeting till we can arrange we can do it at the workshop to arrange the.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. I make a motion to postpone this until our February workshop so we can interview the prospective appointment.
Very good. Maybe by then we can have a municipal election appointee. We can close the loop on that. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mary Beth, you just beat him. Mary Beth's got the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Daryl?
Daryl always aye.
Mary Beth?
Aye, Mary Beth.
Jerry?
Jerry Ashmore, aye.
And Kevin?
Aye.
And the mayor's also aye. I did the corners this time, so we're there. Next council action is we received a presentation at the council workshop on our landscape contract. We've had that in our packet now for our review. We had 3 proposals.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion after reviewing myself, and I hope that the fellow council members will agree, that after reviewing those, due to the variation in the line item pricing, I move that we throw these bids out and reissue a revised RFP for a contract to be awarded to align with our annual budget cycle starting in July of 2021.
Very good. We have a motion to disregard the current bids and revise the RFP to align because of the discrepancy in the line item costs, and to reissue this and then approve it later on. Do we have a second so we can add some any conversation?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. while we're in any conversation about this, I would like to add for the record that council did receive and acknowledges receipt of two letters, communication to us, one from Martin Landscaping and one from Southern Palmetto. It is inappropriate for me to read what was into them into the record, as we're not moving forward and did not give the opportunity for all three to do that. So I just wanted to acknowledge we did receive them, and all of council has them at this point in time. Any further discussion on Maribeth's motion to revisit this RFP, actually to reissue this RFP?
I want to make a position statement. I want to recuse myself from any discussion, any voting on this, on this contract.
Very good, Jerry. Just go ahead and mute yourself till we finish this. I'll let you know when we're available. Thank you for that. And so the rest of council, any further discussion?
Just for the record, so how will the town be handling landscaping until June of this year?
Very
So-
good question. Van?
So well, I was going to say in my recommendation, I should have added that we'll continue with the same one
Okay.
until we do the new RFP. I'm sorry, Mayor.
Okay.
No, that's fine. It's really an administrative issue because the current contract does allow us to extend it. Is that correct, man?
Right, we're in a month to month at the moment because the end date of the current contract was in December. We reached out to Southern Palmetto to see if they'd be willing to honor the contract price for the month of January, and they did. Obviously, I'll reach out to them tomorrow to see what can be done between now and July 1.
Okay.
Very good. And we'll, I know that our town engineer has decided to kick in his second retirement into focus, and you'll get to work on updating the RFP and get it back out on the streets. So hearing no further discussion, we'll go ahead and call the question. Maribeth, you made the motion?
I made the motion that we hold on the RFPs and reissue the RFP to coincide with our annual budget. We will continue to use the current landscape if the town manager can get that worked out. We'll continue with them, and then we will reissue and reconsider the RFPs. And we want to line it up so it comes out with our budget for 2021.
Very good. So we'll call for the vote, Maribeth, and you can lead us off.
Aye, Maribeth.
Darrell,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
and the mayor is also aye. So sorry we're putting more work on you, Van, but let's go ahead and handle it in that way. Important dates and information. Jerry, let's get Jerry back on board. Hopefully he can hear us.
Send him a text.
Thank you, Mary. Normally you could step out of the room, we go get him. This is kind of harder to do.
I know.
I guess Tony could have done something for us, but we could have, we promoted somebody up. We knock him down one notch.
I'll send him a message within Zoom, but I don't know if it'll reach him if he's.
I sent him a text
I
now.
sent him one and he said, okay.
Okay, we'll give him a second to come back on board.
There he is.
There he is. Thank you, Jerry.
Hey, yes.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that. So the next item of business is important dates. We only have one on the agenda. That's January 19th, Redevelopment Commission. Does anybody else have anything they want to add?
I just got a question. When we're going to throw around dates for our retreat this year? And how we're gonna do that?
Let's please make a note to put that on the workshop for February, and let's start throwing those dates out there and get that done. Also, I think we need to also talk about, we'll call it the late spring, early summer concert series. Do we start thinking about that? Spread people out further, do some conversation for next month. Just let's put it on the agenda to talk about. I think we need to talk about it, make a decision and move on, whatever that decision is. We're kind of in council comments here. So anybody have any comments? Jerry, if you can lead us off because you're in the upper left.
Sir, I am good. I appreciate it. Thank you all for everything you do.
Thank you. Maribeth, you're next right below him.
Not a thing. Thank you very kindly for everything.
Very good. Darrell.
Yeah, Van, maybe you can answer this question. Does the town of Port Royal have any type of resources available to assist single family rehab or those that are in distress or so forth, that have some issues that need some home repairs? Do we have anything? I know the city of Beaufort has a similar program, or Bluffton.
Well, I think Jessica Daly, who was on with us earlier,
Right.
may
And
be
Low
able to
Country-
point
Low
us
Cog?
in the right
Low
direction.
Cog.
Yeah.
Well, I know Low Cog. In fact, I refer them to Low Cog, but I wanted to know if we had any type of resources in the town of Port Royal.
Do we have
Not
a home repair-
formally.
Don't we have some money in a home repair grant that we have?
What we have is we have money currently in the housing fund. Obviously, what y'all have done so far is designate a piece of that for participation with the kind of regional housing authority.
Okay.
It would be up to council to designate any of those dollars that could be used for single family home repair, that sort of thing.
Well, maybe.
Okay.
So if that's something you want to talk about, at the workshop next month, or is it real pressing, Darryl? Is it something that they
No, I'm
really
sure
need to get done?
No,
quickly?
we can talk about it at the next workshop also, because
Okay.
I did refer them to Low Cog, but I wasn't certain if we had any programs locally
Right.
to offer assistance.
Well, that may be something we want to discuss during our council workshop to see if we want to start thinking about a program in place. If nothing else, the program could be administrative in a way to help people find the money that's out at LoCog and help them fill out the applications and do what needs to be done. So maybe, Darryl, it's an excellent suggestion, and we'll put it on our annual workshop to do that as well. Kevin, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, really quick, just two comments. One, it made me think about it earlier. When we brought up the Cypress wetlands, that the Friends of the Cypress Wetlands have launched a website. And I recommend anybody check it out. It's got a lot of great content on it. They've done a good job, and the history behind it is a lot of information that you learn. It's so much more than just a beautiful site with a bunch of birds in it. Like, there's a lot going on there that I didn't know about until visiting that. So just, like I said, the Friends of the Cypress Wetlands website. I believe there's a link on the Port Royal website.
Yep. Thank you, Brooke, very much. We asked her to put a link, and she did.
Yep. And then one more thing too. I know everyone remembers the old vendors market on Paris Avenue, right by the vet's office. So that has been revamped, redesigned, and it's now called the Southern Elk. It's similar to the same kind of concept with a market for local artists to sell, their crafts and their art. It has a grand opening this Saturday at 9 a.m. and just trying to get the word out there and let people know, so maybe they can come out and support some, local small businesses and local artists. So the Southern Elk, it's in the old vendors market on Paris Avenue. Grand open this Saturday.
Great. Kevin, appreciate that. I am tied up Saturday around that time. Hopefully another council member can make it. And maybe Van, we can ask our media guy to stop by, get a couple of pictures and start posting all grand openings. We should really start trying to celebrate any kind of openings within the town and do that. The only comment I have is I got a lot of questions today. I'm sure that we all have, and we're hearing them all over the place, is with the COVID vaccine, and it's now rolling down to the average citizen, obviously 70 and over. There's a lot of information out there. Please, anybody who's watching this, follow the municipal websites, DHEC, BMH, go there. There's great information. All of us are posting what Beautiful Memorials put out. We've got some online forms and information to make it easier to get connected. If you need assistance, there's plenty available out there. BMH has been great with helping people. So I just wanted to remind everybody that it's changing daily, so you got to look daily.
Hey, Mayor, do you maybe think that maybe Van, one of y'all, we could get it on our website?
I know we did it on our social media page. Maybe we can do a link to that form on our website. Absolutely. I think it's important. We have a COVID section in our website. We can get that there as well.
Thank you.
If there is no other business, we'll open it up to see if there was any public comment for non-agenda items at this time.
Sir, the only email that I did receive was from the Junior Service League for their event, the Touch a Truck.
Okay, that's normally a March timeframe, that's correct?
I
Yes.
believe they've had it in the past in November, but this past November they rescheduled it for the spring. So now they're just kind of seeing how the town feels with what they have planned.
Well, Van, from your perspective, is this something council has to approve, or is this something staff needs to approve? Or is this something, if you're asking for us to give you guidance, please state that as well.
I would appreciate guidance on this. You know, we talked about last month, you know, some of our parks and smaller events, you know, 50 people or less. This obviously the attendance will be a little higher. You know, we have the Charities Oyster Roast that, you know, they're contemplating what they may or may not do. And that's obviously an event. And just, you know, just talking about street music just now, you know, do we consider what dates and how we would be handling it? So yes, definitely guidance.
Well, I remember the conversation we had back in the fall in regards to this also with the numbers, the uptick in numbers at that time. And we're essentially at the same point, if not even worse now, because the numbers are even higher than they were back then. And with 2 new strands of COVID that's out right now that we're dealing with, I think it takes us back to that same discussion. And even on a month-to-month basis, we can continue to evaluate it. But I'm just looking at the St. Patrick's Day celebration in Savannah was just canceled again this year because, you know, they're mindful of where we are right now. And these numbers aren't going down. We're breaking records on a daily basis, you know, over 3,000 plus deaths a day. And so at this point right now, I think it warrants further discussion before we just come up and make a hasty decision. But this is the same conversation that we had back at that time, and we have not shown any improvements since then. We're in a worse predicament.
Yeah, Daryl, I completely agree. I don't see with these numbers how we could say that they could do something in March. I think if they could make it happen in 30 days, they're going to have to wait for our February meeting and for us to see what the trends are doing at that point. It gets me, it's such a great event, what it is, but the name of the event gets me nervous. It's called Touch a Truck. So
yes,
you know, as many people that come up there to touch the truck and then another person comes up behind it and touches the same truck. That's exactly what we've all been asked to prevent from happening. So how do we do this? So hopefully they can prepare a document and maybe present to us to say what they think that they can do to make this a safe event. And obviously we got to look at what the numbers are. So that would be the guidance I would send back to them. Be prepared to come before us next month.
Daryl, I agree with you. And Jeff.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Very
do
good.
too.
Very good. Well, if there's no other public comment at this time, I will.
Kevin,
Yeah, I was gonna
Kevin, go ahead.
I was gonna make a statement just about the you know, I sent an email to you earlier about this event, and I trust me, I want to do what's right and be safe. But I've, you know, someone that's been to all 3 of those events, and so I think you got to look at event specifics. And Beaufort Charities event is where it is a roped in, very tight quarters events. Savannah St. Patrick's Day is even more tight than that. Whereas I've been to Touch a Truck a couple of times, and it is pretty spread out. I mean, it's a lot. It's a group of people. They're walking up and down the street, lots of space between people. So I do think events, you know, can be looked at differently as in, you know, I mean, there's a difference between what happens in St. Patty's Day down in Savannah and what happens at the Touch a Truck Festival on Paris Avenue. So
yeah, I think you're right on. That's why a good presentation is the way to go.
right. And that's what I said, we can evaluate it.
Yep.
Let's have a discussion on it.
Yep. Good. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for that. Thanks for supporting that event, because it is a good event. Hearing nothing else, I will go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn. We've completed the agenda. We only need a
Motion
single.
to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Be safe, and we'll see everybody soon.
all right.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.